Hey, I'm just gonna try to make, I guess, an attempt at explaining kind of my method for rooster skipping. Um, Obviously, I am of the belief that everyone should kind of do it the way they feel most comfortable with, but there are some consistent properties of the trick that seem to, when I kind of started noticing, it started helping me out a lot more. Most of them involve the positioning of Link, which is pretty much imperative for pulling it off consistently, in my opinion, is getting a solid setup that you can do, with little variance. My setup is I typically, I guess I'll just start it and I'll try to pause it and show you as I go. So I do that and then I quit that, and then I'm gonna buffer. Okay, so if you look at Link's foot, the front of his foot isn't going past the corner on the right side of this middle rock formation. And I found that if you keep his foot from passing the pixel, the first pixel of the rock formation, and kind of keep it, diagonally adjacent as it is right now, then he will, it's a safe spot, kind of more or less, to keep attempting hookshot without worrying about falling into a dead zone. Because I've noticed if you go past that too far, he starts sliding over to the other side of the little he sort of starts to slide to the center of each of these little like dead zone tiles. And if you let him kind of sit there, he's kind of on the axis or the apex of one of two dead zones in this position, and I'll show you what I mean, where you can kind of slide around, but he kind of stays fixated there. He'll slide back, but then, oh, well, that was not quite, but let me load up my other state. Here it is. So, yeah, if you look, you see that was too far. See, I'm keeping his foot kind of in that position that I was describing. And this is the kind of first part of how I got comfortable with the trick as a reference, because I know I used to do this a lot, where I would kind of spam it a little too much, and then he would start to slide forward, as you're seeing, his foot is like past the formation, and then he enters that dead zone. And so if you keep him on this side, you can kind of keep him wedged in the corner here, without really worrying about movement. See, he's like not even moving at all. Of course, you need to like time the hook shot accordingly to like not really allow any sliding between hook shots, which I kind of wasn't doing. But so yeah, when I see him start creeping forward a little bit, you don't have to worry about it until you see him creep forward, and then thanks, Bow Wow. And then that's when you kind of hold off on the hook shot in intervals, and then let him slide back kind of comfortably like that. Yeah. If you watch. So let me pull him ahead a little bit. See if I can get him to do it. He's honestly wedged right now, so. But yeah, oh, here we go. So, okay, well this is kind of nice too. Sometimes he gets wedged like this when you start it in that setup, because he wants to kind of stay in those corners. Let's see if I can not jam. So, more or less, that's like the beginning. And I think, as a lot of people say, the beginning, the setup is pretty much imperative that you get consistent, because that's how you do the rest of the trick, with it, so that, because I think a good setup means you can kind of do it more consistently in the way you're comfortable with, as opposed to a lot of like factors that you can't influence if you're just kind of jumping differently every time. So that's the first part, and then the second thing is, as it's pretty much, it seems generally agreed upon that, the whole, keeping your inputs as close to each other as possible as far as the feather and the hook shot, because you want to minimize that time between the hook shot and the feather. That wasn't good. So that if you do not land the feather, on that first attempt, he will, wow, Chain Chomp, or Bow Wow is just messing with me. So you'll be able to immediately do another hook shot. And something that I have a problem with is if you, I don't know if I can recreate it necessarily, but sometimes you'll see the hook shot go, but you'll hear the hop, and that means that you're pressing the two inputs too close together to each other. And you actually need to kind of let the feather take priority in your input before hitting the hook shot, but not by much. So that kind of covers that point for me, which was a big deal for kind of learning it. The second point, or the second issue, is once you get that first jump down, kind of however, I've noticed that I still use the foot as a frame of reference. If you look, I'll get a hop here. If the Bow Wow wouldn't mess with me, but I have a state with that Bow Wow, but whatever. So if you look, his foot is kind of similar to where it's kind of lining up. Well, in this freeze frame, it's not, but if you keep the front of his foot lined up with the pixel on the leftmost side of the rock formation, he will do the same thing as I described on the other side, where he'll kind of stay near the apex of the two dead zones to the left and right of him, and he won't slide either way, as long as you're fast enough with the hook shot to keep him there. And if you aim down and to the left a little bit as you're doing this, because you're going to want to prep for that jump to the final platform, he will sometimes just get wedged into that corner, and you don't really have to worry about positioning if that happens. That doesn't happen every time, but sometimes he'll get stuck there to where he won't move like ever as long as you're keeping your direction down left. And I'm going to unpause it and try to see if I can get that to happen. Okay, well, that was great. So yeah, I always just try to keep it kind of in the realm of, as I described earlier, for the right side. It doesn't have to be exact, and then your inputs have to be, kind of staggered. You don't want them to happen simultaneously. Okay, let's see if I can... Okay, so you see he's kind of wedged. I'm not really worrying about my direction on my analog stick. I'm honestly just holding down left and spamming the hook shot. And you saw he wasn't moving or really doing a whole lot of fancy stuff, which is kind of, to me, optimal, because then you can kind of breathe a little easier as you're attempting it, as you're seeing. I can just keep doing the hook shot and he won't really move because his foot is kind of in that position. So I think, and if he starts to creep forward like he just did, just kind of do the same thing I did on the right side, where you let him slide back a little bit, kind of hold off on your hook shot. Obviously, the cool thing about this is that it kind of, to me, it removes a lot of the kind of randomness that it can feel in Rooster Skip, and leaves it a lot to you just having to get that timing down, which I think, is always a good thing to practice your timing. And I think that, to me, that makes me a lot more comfortable with the trick, when I know my positioning isn't going to be a factor in whether I succeed or not. So if you look at that, the one disclaimer I guess I should have made a point of earlier is that using this setup that I kind of have taught myself, you generally have, there's a good possibility that you're going to wind up needing to do a third mini hop, because his positioning when you're doing down left, it's never quite enough, which is kind of a problem. But at the same time, to me, it always feels like that jump isn't as finicky, because you kind of have a lot more surface area on the left of you to kind of work with, and he doesn't seem like he'll want to fall into the dead zone as easily. So, to me, with that, it doesn't really influence my decision to try to get closer before that jump, because this setup right here seems really cozy, for me at least. This will happen. Yeah, so the issue is, take everything I say with a grain of salt. Clearly, I'm far from consistent. When I do, the thing though is, like, I'm not I'm really happy that I found this setup, because now I kind of feel more like it's just on me to get the timing, which, oh, there you go. So, and it leaves a lot of the setup kind of out of the realm of happenstance. And yeah, I hope that's kind of just a good reference for some people if they need it. I realize, there's so many Rooster Skip. There's so much information on Rooster Skip online and on the speedrun.com like forum and shit. So I guess my intention with this is just to provide another insight, maybe as an additional resource along with the other awesome tutorials and kind of contributions that other people have made. By no means I'm not saying this is how you do Rooster Skip, because obviously there's a lot of flaws, but at the same time, flaws that can be improved on just with more practice and things. So yeah, I guess that's just my 2 cents on that. I hope that's useful.